I'd like to start off by giving a brief of the Fijian Media Association. It is an association that journalists have been trying to put together for many years now. We've succeeded around 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's been a struggle. As you know, the media and the journalists came through a very difficult period after 2006, where we were all put in boxes, pro-government, anti-government, and such. It was very hard for us to come together. But thankfully, we have good leaders, and we have decided to come together as an association to work together on items of common interest. And the association has been going on for 2 to 3 years now, as I mentioned earlier. It's been tough. It's been led by journalists who have very little time, but we do what we can. And since these 2 years, we've been undergoing training with a number of organizations on financial literacy for younger journalists, on climate change, on elections reporting, amongst others. We are looking to make further developments to the association, to strengthen it, perhaps look for an office and a full-time coordinator. That is something we want to work on to the future. But right now, I want to just thank, first of all, the leadership, the president, Nemani Delamatiki from the Fiji Sun, and Eleanor Basalara, the vice president from the Fiji Times, and the other journalists that have put their hands up to keep this going and keep the journalists, while we are competitors, to keep the media working together and standing together on items of common interest. I would like to start by reading our statement this morning on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day. And it goes, the Fijian Media Association is proud of its members and proud to celebrate this World Press Freedom Day with them. Our journalists have worked so hard and endured many challenges over the past year, and they deserve to be recognized for the great work they do every day for the people of this country. They have admirably covered and brought to people's homes stories of social justice, of the environment, of suffering, and overcoming natural disasters such as the floods and cyclones. And they have held our leaders to account for their policies and actions. They have touched on emotional tragedies such as the plane crash in Lambasa and the nation's victories at the Commonwealth Games and our wins at the IRB 7 Series. While they tell other people's stories, our journalists rarely get to tell their own stories. And today we will celebrate with them by getting them to tell their stories through this forum we are holding here today. We thank our partners for this forum, the Citizens Constitutional Forum, for coming up with the idea and working with us to get this day happening. Our intention today is to celebrate journalism and media freedom, and we hope that the people of Fiji recognize and applaud the work of our journalists over the past year. I'd just like to recognize those that will be speaking for us today. As we said, today is about us telling our stories and sharing our experiences, because we rarely get to do this, except maybe over a beer somewhere. On the far end, Nemani Delamatiki from the Fiji Sun, and we have next to him Eleanor Turangeviu, the North Bureau editor for the Fiji Broadcasting Corporation. We have Andreu Bukelangi, the manager news for Fiji Television Limited, and Sikeli, the features writer at the Fiji Times. So those are the people that will be speaking for us today. But to start our session off, it is my pleasure to welcome the program manager for the Citizens Constitutional Forum, Lucretia Hussein, to say a few words.
Thank you, Stanley. Happy Happy Press Freedom Day, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the jointly organized CCF and Fiji Media Association Editors Forum on Crisis Reporting. At the outset, I wish to communicate the sincere regrets of our CEO, Mr. Mbulutani Mataitawakilai. He was actually looking forward to presenting the opening remarks, but he was informed of a separate occasion that needed his attention. However, I'll deliver this speech on his stead, and I'm honored to do so. To begin, CCF would like to thank our donors, the European Union, for their continued support, and also the FMA for their willingness to partner with CCF to organize today's forum. World Press Freedom Day serves as an occasion to remind and inform citizens of the continued struggle and violations of press freedom. A reminder that in dozens of countries around the world, publications are censored, media houses closed down, journalists, editors, and publishers fined, suspended, harassed, attacked, detained, and even murdered. It is a day to encourage and develop initiatives in favor of press freedom and to assess the state of press freedom worldwide. The ideals behind commemorating today are closely related to CCF's mandate to promote and empower citizens through education on good governance and human rights. Press freedom plays a vital role in achieving and preserving democracy. So simply put, if you like, no press freedom, no democracy. The freedom of expression is a fundamental right, human right, enshrined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, along with its corollaries of freedom of information and press freedom. Freedom of expression serves as an enabler of all other rights. Around the world, there are continuing debates on the changing role of mass media, the freedom or lack thereof of the press, and the capacity of the media to deliver in their self-appointed role as the fourth estate. And while local critique on media organizations is made at all levels of society, there is rarely a space created for journalists to voice their own opinions on the most pressing issues facing them. In the day-to-day grind of driving national discourse on all manner of issues of national interest, the voice of our journalists in discussions around these issues facing their own profession can at most times be lost. Journalists are a reflective power of the people, so creation of this space to hear and understand the challenges of their work is vital for a democracy. The CCF, in collaboration with FMA, organized this forum with the hopes that it would serve as a forum for discussion to help us better understand the issues faced by the media industry with opinions and insights from those closest to it, our very own journalists. So on that note, I wish to thank you all for joining us here today and wish all the panelists the best in their deliberations. Vinaka.
Naka. Thank you very much for that statement. We now, without further ado, invite the President of the Fijian Media Association and from the Fiji Sun, Mr. Nemani Delematik, to deliver his statement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to start today. If we can just observe 1 minute silence for the journalists who have passed away within the last 12 months or so. I see UNESCO has quoted a figure of 79. I don't know how many locally here have passed away during this time. Also, recently we saw the death of 11 journalists in Kabul, in Afghanistan. So, can we please observe 1 minute silence in tribute for journalists who have fallen? I think the opening statement delivered this afternoon, I think, sort of sums up what I was going to say here today. But I'd just like to, from the outset, say that when we talk about media freedom, I think we've got to go back and look at what has happened over the since 1987, for those who were around at that time, and what has happened since then. Media freedom, like it is being said, our freedom depends on media freedom. And so I know there is a perception out there that we're not totally free here. But as one who was here in 1987, or even prior to 1987, most of the rules that were there prior to 1987, they make up most of what we have today in the form of the media, the media code. I don't know whether some of you may know, in 1986, 87, I was called to court because of something that I wrote. Just to give a background, we published, this is the old Fiji Sun, we published the content of a paper which was supposed to be a secret document. Anyway, just to cut the story short, I finally got acquitted, but it gave me an insight of what the challenges that we face as journalists going through. So those challenges are there. One thing, we've got to follow the law. Just to give you a bit of background, I was charged with breaking the Official Secrets Act. Also, there were multiple other charges, but most of the lawyers who were around at that time, the Koya, Vijay Paramananam, all the top lawyers, criminal lawyers, they told me that, oh, look, you were gone. There's no hope for you. No, you'll go in. Fortunately, my lawyer was able to argue in court on a certain technical point, which got me off that case. But I mention this because sometimes we lose sight the fact that if you look back through history, these are the challenges that we face as journalists. Most of the laws that were in existence there are still there today in the form of a media decree. I know there was a provision in the media decree that talks about penalizing journalists. That has been removed now. I remember writing a column, or maybe two columns, attacking that provision. Now, going back to this perception, the perception that we're not free in Fiji, I think it's a perception. It's only a perception, because what I would like to challenge as journalists is to be able to go out there and practice our craft, to become real journalists. One of the challenges that we have today is that, and I'm talking about investigative reporting here, investigating journalism. One of the problems we have today is we really don't have the skills to be able to do it. And secondly, and I think we don't have the resources to be able to do it. And so this is for the media organizations to look at. Training is so important. It's fundamental to the way journalism will develop in this country. I know we've had a go at training within the Fijian Media Association, but I'm calling on all the media organizations to actually conduct training within their own organization. I know some are doing it, but I'm talking about all media organizations, because there's a very small pool of journalists out there, and sometimes we're all drawing from the same pool, right? Because of this lack of skilled journalists. Now, I declare my interest here. I'm training, and I speak this with a bit of passion, because this is what I do. I train our journalists at the Fiji Sun, and I think over the last 4 years we've managed to raise the level. We're now accepting, and I think we've got the biggest pool of graduates in the newsroom. And so this is the area that will help in addressing some of the issues that people come up with. They talk about this thing about perception, the perception that we are not free. I don't think we try hard enough. There are cases where when you publish something, the people that you write about will challenge you in court, right? That will happen. But if you've got a solid case, to go with, you'll be able to stand up in court. We had a recent case where one of the big bus companies took us to court. I got hauled into court as well. But we were able to present our case that they were well not only documented, but we had the facts and figures. In the end, the company lost the case because they didn't have enough evidence to be able to prove that what we published was not only not correct, but it had done damage to the company. So what I'm saying is, and there are other cases still in the pipeline coming through, but if we journalists, and I'm talking about training, we should be able to go out and be able to investigate and to report things that need to be out there in the public eye. Having said that, I'd just like to commend journalists for the work that they do. I know, we've got a lot of young journalists who are coming up through the ranks, and they're learning. And I stress the importance of training. Today we celebrate media freedom, and I think there's a lot of talk, but one of the fundamental things that we need to be aware of is that if journalists are not well trained, they will not be able to do the job they're supposed to do. With that note, I'd like to say thank you for being here today, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of things said, questions asked. But I just want to say, and I want to close this remark. I want to challenge all the journalists. Leave aside this thing about the perception that we are media, that we are not free, right? if we do our job properly, there's nothing to be afraid of if we cover our grounds properly. Getting hauled to court is you know, I think within the last year I've been to court, I think twice, to answer cases. So that's part and parcel of democracy. The people have a right to be able to, if they are aggrieved, the people are aggrieved with something that you write, they have a right to be able to seek redress in a court of law. And so, but if you've covered your grounds well, and you know your lawyers are, you know, with you, there's nothing to be afraid of. So, I want to leave that note with you, and hopefully it might generate discussion. And also looking forward into the future, I think as a body, as a Fijian Media Association, we need to be looking more on the interests of the journalists that we represent. So I just leave it at that note, and hopefully other ideas will come up today as we talk and discuss media freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Namani, for that statement and presentation. Talking about the perception that we are not free, and are we free to do our jobs? It's maybe the journalists can answer that questions later during the forum. Also, the aspect of media training is well noted, and to cover our grounds well. Something that we need to keep in mind in order to do and be able to make use of media freedom. Sitting here today, I recall the last time we had a media event here many years ago. It was something called the Fiji Media Council, which is now no more. And at that time, only editors spoke. If you were a journalist, you basically sat at the back and report. So we are very happy today that we've changed things around. And today, through Eleanor Turangeviu, the North Bureau Editor for the Fiji Broadcasting Corporation, she'll be able to share the experiences and the challenges that the small team of journalists based in the North, I think there's 5 or 6 of them, 10 of them, and how are they covering an area remote and isolated. So, without further ado, welcome Eleanor.
Sorry, excuse me, my voice is shaky because usually we are on that side of the podium and not this side. So, Bolare and Bolisi everybody, I'm just grateful to be given this opportunity to share with you some of the challenges that the media in the Northern Division face almost on a daily basis. After Stanley called me up the other day, I called up the other journalists and said, you guys have to help me in this, so give me your ideas. So we came up with a list, not a long one, but a small one. A first issue that we face is with regards to trainings and workshops. We feel that we are being left out in these things. Most of the trainings, like elections training that Stanley had mentioned, as well as the climate change reporting, they're basically held in Suva, not brought out to the division for journalists in the division. Another issue that we face is getting answers, mostly the response time to our questions. When we send our questions to authorities, as we all know, there are proper procedures to follow, so we can't just get comments from HODs out in the division, so we have to send our questions to SUVA, and we have to wait sometimes weeks to get our answers, and we often get the telling off from our editors because we can't give our stories. Internet connectivity, unlike Vitilevu, internet connectivity in the north is not that good. We often most of the times where we'll drive for a few hours, then when we reach a hill, we'll all get off just to try and send an update for online or for the news brief or for radio updates. So it's quite a challenge, considering the fact that we have to meet our deadlines, the demands coming in from our headquarters. Another issue that we face is traveling, safety-wise. We have to travel far to get a story, mostly because it's rural areas, so we travel 4 hours, 3-4 hours to get the story. We come back, we reach the office, it's like 5-6 o'clock. For TV bulletin, you've missed your deadline. So, and for news, for print media, sometimes you've missed your deadlines and then you get the telling off from your editors as well. So that's an area that we will need understanding on the part from editors, and as well as resources. Equipment-wise, most of the time we are required to give quality pictures, give quality videos, but we can't do that if we are given second-rated equipment to work with. Hand-me-downs from the headquarters are given to us, and then we are required to give like quality pictures and videos. So we do the same amount of work. We go out to the field as well. So if we are we are required to send good pictures and videos, please give us good equipment. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our stories get to the national news. We make sure that those living in Vanuatu get to be represented and that their voices are heard. However, we feel that sometimes our stories get pushed back, they're sidelined. We feel that it's not as important as stories that are being done in Suva, because we are put right at the end of the bulletin. And sometimes when we get pressed to give our stories because we're meeting the deadline, only to find out the next day that it didn't make it into publication or broadcast at all. So most of the time it's demoralizing. We all face the same issue. So just for the editors to note. Just some of the big stories that we've covered in the last, I've only been in Mombasa for 2 years. So being there, some of the big stories that we covered was the 3 sisters that perished in the home fire in Bulileka, as well as the father who drowned his 3 children, as well as the one just recently, the plane crash at Ndalikoro. So I'd just like to share my personal experiences in covering the stories. The first one was for the 3 sisters that perished in the fire. I remember very clearly that Friday evening, as usual, because we don't have anything else to do in Mombasa, we were drinking grog. So, and around 9 o'clock, we were drinking grog at the police, not the police station, it was the police barracks. At the police barracks, and then we had the siren go off, so we knew instantly there was something wrong. So we went around asking, and then they said that there's a fire and there's a possibility that some children are trapped inside the home. So grogged out and all, we went. Only to arrive at the scene to hear the cries of the parents of the girls, who collapsed right in front of us. As a mother of 4 girls, it was hard to take it in. I was just grateful that I didn't have to go through that situation. The biggest challenge for me was not letting my emotions get into the way of reporting the story. And if that wasn't bad enough, 3 days later, a father decided to push his 3 children into the water. And they all died. 3 of them died, 1 survived. So basically, for the 3 days after that, the media were basically based around the Lambasa River, following the search and rescue team, seeing the bodies being retrieved from the water, put into the body bags and taken by police. It was hard for us. We mostly had to, some of the journalists had kept on seeing the images of the children being get out of the water. It took weeks to get over it. It was a very traumatic experience, but we usually talk about it over a few bowls, and yeah, that's how we got through it. Just lastly was I would like to share an experience that the media faced during the coverage of the plane crash at Lake Coral. We felt that we were left out in the events that happened there. From the Monday that the plane went missing, Tuesday was the only day that the authorities were able to share with us whatever information they had. From Wednesday, we were left completely in the dark. We were not given access to the Lake Coral. We were not allowed to go in the helicopter, not even send our drones up to get pictures of the crash site itself. So Thursday, we were told that the bodies would be brought to the mortuary. 5 a.m., the Fiji Times journalists were at the mortuary. I arrived at around 7 a.m. The Sun journalist arrived a little bit later. We were all there. We had our breakfast there, we had our lunch there, we had our tea there. And about 5 to 5, a police car arrives and tells us that we can't be there. We have to move out. So we moved away. And then they told us, no, out of the hospital premises. I think Chona was there as well that day. So we moved out of the hospital premises. And then if that wasn't bad enough, they locked the gate. So we couldn't get in at all. And we felt that we were disrespected. We felt that we were being stopped from doing our duties of reporting. And this was done in plain view of the public. And just lastly, what I would like to see be done, basically bring out the trainings and workshops to the divisions. Stanley, stop sleeping. And if trauma counseling can be provided for journalists, mainly after some traumatic events, because mostly it is traumatic and it takes weeks for us to recover from these kind of things. And just a request for the Fiji Media Association, if you could please just hold up various sessions with government departments, especially the Fiji Police Force, because we work closely with them about some of the things that the media require when such big events happen. I guess that's it from me, and I'd like to thank FMA as well as CCF for organizing and allowing the media from the North to at least have a say or contribute to the panel today. And I convey the well wishes from the North media colleagues to everyone on board Media Freedom Day today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Ladies and gentlemen, I think there you have it, raw and uncut. The issues that faced. I think we're going to get it from our editor later on, but that's okay. But I think we can see clearly from there the passion that journalists in the North. You have to be passionate if you're able to survive in a place like that. And I think we're very proud of our members in the North and the work that they do. And I think from what I'm hearing, they've had a few things on their chest for a while. And it's a good opportunity for them to let it go. And this is something we will commit to try and talk to our senior members, our editors, to try and ensure that the issues of the journalists in the North and the West, they were going to send their message via Skype. We're not sure if that's possible. But again, Eleanor, thank you very much for coming and for conveying the message from our colleagues in the North. We will now invite the Fiji Television Manager News, Ndreu Bukilangi, to make his statement.
Bula Stena, Bula media members and guests for today's World Press Freedom Day. I'll be short, I'll just keep it simple. Talking about World Freedom Day. When the question is out there about World Freedom Day, there's always a lot of answers from anyone, from the street, from media members, from journalists. They know on what is World Freedom Day. But for the reality of the newsroom, in any newsroom you go to, they know the reality whether media is free from doing its work. But on the other hand, when doing your work and being independent and all, it comes with responsibility. Being responsible on what you report, being responsible when informing the public, being responsible when giving answers from questions asked during press conference. Those are all the components that you need to ask before answering or before knowing what is World Freedom Day. World Freedom Day is about us, journalists, in informing, giving the public what they want. But with that comes a lot of challenges. A lot of challenges we face in trying to report, in trying to get the simple message across, at times from the members of the police force, maybe members of government agency, in trying to get answers that you want and need for the public to know before they can come up with answers to what you have said in the news. For us, it is simple. Anything that goes on air, it has to be factual, it has to be balanced, it has to be simple, and have all the media code of ethics in it, keeping it to the public and for the public to know and give their own side of the story on the information that you have passed to them. It comes with a lot of challenges. There are young journalists that have come through. You cannot compare somebody that has been in the journalism field for 15 years and someone that has just come from 1 to 2 years experience. There are people out there that you want to talk to, will always want to talk to seasonal journalists who have been there since from day one they are in the office. For someone new coming in, they'll have a lot of challenges to face. They will answer calls from these people who are coming in from the number of years they've been in the field. But for those of them, for journalists who are just there from 1 to 3 years, you have to meet them, you have to know their mood and all, before they can be comfortable in speaking to you, in getting what you want from those who are in authority. There are always laws in place, and different stakeholders have their own laws in place on talking to the media. Some, they have the spokesperson, some will have the up authorities. While reflecting on this and trying to make those stories balanced, at times you can miss out on the headlines, you'll miss out on 1 or 2, 3 days, but keep pushing. We have to keep pushing to get that balance and inform the public and inform the viewers, inform the listeners, our readers on what they want. They are there. You are there for them to keep the fight for them. But it does not come as easy as ABC, they say. You know, it's not easy as ABC. If you've been here since 2000, you'll know during the Mosile Waturang in 2000, we were kept locked outside at the Novotel now in Labi, and the Mosile Waturang was happening inside without knowing. After that, then they'll have the press conference. They'll inform you of what they have said, but you have to go back and ask members you know from the GCC on what actually happened inside. Those are the stories, those are the reality we face during our journalism day. Media freedom, it's good, but with a lot of responsibility. Remember, there will be always hurdles, there will always be struggles in our field. It does not stop us from giving our 100% in covering any story. We have faced that in the past. We are facing it again today. The same media code of ethics that was there in the past is now into another form as a degree, but does not stop us from giving our best. Remember, let's live, let's keep fighting, learn to live and fight it another day. Thank you.
Awesome. And I think that's the longest speech I've ever heard Drew give. Apart from his rambling stories around the Broad Bowl. Thank you, Drew, for that. Much appreciated. From a very journalist. We also happy to hear from another seasoned journalist, Sikeli Gondobu, the features writer from the Fiji Times.
Sorry, I'm not as eloquent, neither articulate as you. Neither am I well prepared like Eleanor. I see they brought papers. I was just called in and for midday to prepare for this. In saying that, when Mr. Delimbatiki mentioned for those that were around in 1987, yes, I was around in 1987, but I was a mere 2-year-old kid running around the shows and getting interviewed. Sorry, if I sound boring you, please say so. When I started my journalism career, I take this time to pay tribute to some of the great people that have mentored me. Some sitting right here, like Andrew Bukelang, started at CFL. Young journalist way back in 2005, fresh from high school. The late Lepani Vikilamata, Malakai Bisamsam, when I left CFL to join FBC. The great man YG, Mataya Sakola, Masimekela Telara, he's still around. So, Fiji Times gave me this blessed opportunity to travel to some of the remote places. I've been asked to talk about my experience, some of the places that I've traveled. back in 2015, while I was still farming in my Koronibas in Wailevu Tunua, I received an invitation, through my mom, through a contact, to try out with the Fiji Times. So fresh from farming, I joined the Fiji Times in August 2015, and a day later I was told to take a hike up in the highlands of Naitasiri, where the most easiest and accessible way to get to the highway is a 5-hour trek crossing the Wainabuka River 4 times before going up and down just 2 hills just to get to the village Nakinda in the district of Namonidao. Just to get there and get the stories of these people, women giving birth in the river, giving birth to treks, a man who is now the village handman, Laisenia Senokonok, who had to carry his wife for 12 hours just to get to the nearest health facility in Nakorsoli. Another man, Ratu Sakiu Samuri Wundi, 74-year-old when we talked in 2015. He voted in the 1972 elections, and since then up until now, he has been promised by those politicians back then and until now that a road will reach Nakinda. And up until now, they're still waiting for that road. And last year I was up again in the district of Namonidolo, at the village of Nauisomo, they're still waiting for that. That took 5 hours. In another trip, went up to Tumboro village, the upper reaches of the Wainimala River. You have to cross the Wainimala River 32 times for 4.5 hours. To get the stories, I was blessed to go with one of the best photographers in the Fiji Times, Professor Niswa. He shot a picture of these children crossing the river, traveling from point A to get to point B, just for the sake of education. And within 5 years, 10 children have done just for the sake of education. The Fiji Times published their story in September of 2015, and in November, government announced that a school will be established up in Nasovere, just close to Tumburu village. We visited that village in January of this year. Imagine the smiles of those children when you see them getting to the nearest school. That overwhelming feeling of satisfaction that you know the work that you have done has inspired and encouraged stakeholders. You can never put a dollar value to that. We journalists don't do this for the money. We do this for restoring humanity. It's for the people, for those stories that are untold, for the voices that are not heard. Who else will tell their story? Who else will share their narrative? 2016 Winston, and I share this experience with no disrespect to the Fiji Sun. Just before we were told that a government vessel will be leaving for Coral Island, media was invited. On the evening before the ship left, we were told media was not allowed to be part of that government vessel, to be part of their trip. We later found out that Fiji Sun had accompanied them. And on the next day, Sherian and Chona Konatadi, they got onto a chopper, they headed to Koro, and that picture of that young kid salvaging his school stuff from that torn down school, I still remember the picture. And later that evening, myself and Chavez again, we were on our way to Koro. Just to get there, the jetty had not been prepared. We had to wait from 6 o'clock in the afternoon until 12 o'clock at midnight, and there was still no vehicle there to pick us. Meanwhile, prior to that, stupid smart me, I was crawling all the way from the boat, hoping that a vehicle would park next to me just to take me to Nassau. So 12 o'clock midnight, there was still no vehicle, and then I told Chavez, you wait, I'll take a walk just to look for a vehicle. So around 12, I walked past Mundu village. I was closing into Nakondo village. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. And I asked some of the villagers, they said, I asked them, where is Nassau? They said, just 4 more villages, you get to Nassau. Oh, yeah, he said, what enough. So I went back to Chavez, another 2 hours back. Chavez, carry your stuff, we head into Nassau. It's Nassau, just close by. But by the time we reached Nakondo village, the sun was already up. It was around after 5 in the morning, after 6, or probably around 6, before we headed to Nassau. And the stories we got from there. I concur with my cousin Elmore. There needs to be some trauma counseling for us journalists. cut the long story short, when I got back home for the next 2 weeks, I was always in arguments with my family, fighting, getting wasted, as always, like always journalists do. Yes, so we got back from Koro. 8 months later, I was in Koro again, and food supply was running low. Villagers were still sleeping in tents. This was in October 2016. We ran a story of adults having to miss either breakfast, lunch, or dinner just so that their children can eat. The great man Chovesa took the picture. The following week, Morris Edstrom sent over truckloads of supplies of food for these villages. Just picture the smiles on the faces of these children. And they've been handed these cartons of food. And you imagine that feeling. While it says, never let your emotions get the best of you, I must admit I failed this. And I failed a lot. My superiors would know. I've been, the prodigal child, missing from work. Probably because of a lot of experience, I don't know. Just lately, I've just returned from a trip to a village, probably the most isolated village, probably in mainland Vitilevu. I don't know whether there's another village. Matokana village, I don't know whether any of you have been to Matokana village. A village isolated that it took me 7.5 hours grueling hike through the treacherous terrain of Nandrongana Rosa just to get to this village. What I'm embarrassed to say is that there was this 60 or so year old woman that was walking in front of me, married there for more than 40 years. I was trying to chase her, to catch up to her, but I couldn't catch up. Yes, but luckily I arrived there safely. And to get the stories of how they have had to transport their housing supplies, how a woman had to carry her husband on horseback to get to the nearest health facility for 15 hours. How a woman was about to give birth to her eldest child, had to walk for 14 hours to get to the nearest health facility. And what hurts me so much is that a road had already been there. I did not know that a road was there until I got there. But it was not well maintained, neither was it upgraded. It was upgraded in 2011, and until 2016, for the first time in 16 years, a truck arrived, went to the celebration of the villages. But it was not well maintained, so for the most of the past 2 years, they have had to endure this treacherous trek. Our hope, it's my hope, it's the prayer of the Fiji Times, the prayer of us journalists, that through our stories, stakeholders will be inspired to reach out to these people. These are Fijians, and I tell you, the way they welcome us, the way they greet us, these are the best description of Fiji, the way the world should be. With those few words, thank you very much, and God bless you.
Man, I don't know about you guys, but I felt that. Huh? Felt Eleanor's and Dreo's and Nemani's. And I think, Eleanor, I think we made the right decision today to leave out the academic speeches and everything and just get the journalists to tell their story. And we see how powerful these stories are, and the commitment and the passion, and how they do justice to media freedom. Huh? So I'll give a few moments now to the floor. For those of you who have any comments to add or any questions to any of the panelists, this is your time. Yes, Reverend. Yes, please.
My name. I was around in 1987. I was in, and I recall my Tobu here, the money. We used to converse after the 1987 coup. I think we were on the same, more or less on the same side. Yeah? I suffered the 1987 coup because I lost my job in the Methodist Church because I was made a stand. I think he remembers that. But over the years, he's talking about perception, and I'd like him to share a bit more about that. Because now I've written a letter about Fiji, comparing Fiji newspaper and a newsletter. And newspaper is where they give and take openness. And I think I said a newspaper, Fiji Times was closer to a newspaper, whereas the Fiji Sun was more like a newsletter, because it gave reporting on activities of those who were part of that side of perception. So I think I presume I just like to have somebody who is old as me, like him, to say a bit more about shifting from one to another. He's saying that the perception is that things have changed, but I think things have changed. But he's saying all the things are still there, as he felt in 1987. I think if I get it right, that's what he's saying. Share a bit more about it. Thank you.
You can just answer from there.
Yeah.
Just answer from there.
When I talk about perceptions, there are a lot of things that journalists can do, but I think there seems to be this perception that if you do something, you're going to get into trouble, and I think it's a hangover from what has happened in the past, the days when there were censors in the newsrooms, But like I said, I want to repeat what I said there. That look, there's nothing to be afraid of. I've been hauled to court. Within the last 3 years, But as a journalist, if you do your job and do your job, covering your bases, there should be nothing to be afraid. You should be afraid. That's what I'm saying. The people that you write about, they have that freedom to be able to seek redress in a court of law, right? You can't stop them. If you write something they don't like, they can take you to court. That's their rights, And the Bill of Rights, that's their rights. But you should be able to defend yourself in court. This is what I'm saying. We should be able, as journalists, if you write about something, the main criteria is we all know that information that you put out must be accurate, right? Number 2, it must be fair and balanced. And number 3, it must be in the public interest. Now, I'm talking about this company that took us to court. The company disputed what we wrote, or what we reported. But because we had documented everything, right? And everything was there for the court to see, they had no legs to stand on, and so the case was dismissed. What I'm saying is, that's why I stress the need for training. The need for training. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Tony.
My experience in Fiji, I've been around serving the media. I think the state of media freedom in Fiji is the worst now, and it has been in my last 40 years of regular media. It's been lost under this government. Now, there are DPs and so on, that constrain the media. Media freedom is determined also by those who actually run the media, the editors, the publishers. They are the ones who decide what is news and what's not news. And a lot of I was coming here, I came here hoping that I would hear from some of these responsible people like their money, who determine what is news and what's not news. And in an environment where you already feel constrained because of the nature of the government, it is the responsibility of the journalists or the people in the media to be more bold and allow as much freedom within their organizations to publish as much as possible. Here we have our experience here is there's no criticism of it. Even there's no criticism of this government. Even news are heavily censored. And there's no investigative journalism. I send letters to the editor. They don't get published. I found this out. So recently, I send it to my money and Fred Wesley. My concerns about the privatization of the FEA. It's all factual. It's all based on things that have been published in the Fiji Times and the Fiji Times. If they don't publish it, the money doesn't publish it. These are examples. The media is so afraid of what's happening, or that they will go to court and their money will be saved. Go to court. And the media also, people should be right now, you're not covering many issues that are very important. Like things are privatizing university. That is one of the most fundamental decisions that is going to determine the future of this country for the next 20 years. It's going to deliver. It is the beginning of something very big. That is impending privatization of all government assets, public assets in this country. And there's no coverage in the media. I've tried to begin a debate in the media about this. There's no coverage. This is very, very important. You should. Journalists must cover these issues. It is coming. It's coming. If this government is re-elected, this is what's going to happen. All the public assets will be sold because basically the government is bankrupt financially. And we are heading that direction. And the media has an important responsibility, please, to cover important issues. Don't evade them. Publish more criticism. Don't be afraid. If you are factual, as Namani said, if you are factual and if you got your grounds, be bold and publish and criticize. Thank you.
Thanks, Vani. Just one point. For those of you who don't know, John and I go back many years. So I know he's a friend of mine. He's still a friend of mine. Talk about letters. Letters to the editor. Letters are edited for clarity. For good taste. For legal reasons. I'm sure all media companies, responsible media companies, would refer their, opinionated pieces to the lawyers, to their lawyers. It's a business practice. Wherever you go in the world, whether it's in the media industry or any other business for that matter, before they make a decision, businesses, they always consult a lawyer before they sign something, document. That's part and parcel of the business. And so, when something is, when the lawyers say, look, you can't run this, you know, it'd be foolish to run against what the lawyers say. You know what I mean? And secondly, and I know Fred would also say this, is sometimes letters, sometimes they have to be edited for space, you know. Some letters are almost 10 pages long, you know. Sometimes you don't have that kind of space, so they're edited. So those are some of the things, just to clarify, you know, what John is talking about, eh? But John, hey, we're still friends, eh?
The points are well noted, and I think that's the part of having this forum, having a healthy debate. If I can just say, talk about letters, I think the Fiji Times has been fined $100,000 already over a letter, and I think currently in court over another letter, which we can So that's where the letter stories are. And just a comment I think I'd like to make about the media situation being probably the worst under this government. What I always see from my experience is whenever someone's in opposition, they talk about media freedom and they support the media. But when they come into government, they act like the previous government. So if for me, I have that healthy distrust of anyone or politician that tells me that they support media freedom, because I know how they've changed in the few governments that have changed hands over time, and the way they came after the media once they were in power, and the shoe is on the other foot. Yes, I think the journalists can be doing more. They can touch on many other issues. I think they can be more critical. I think we take that. But I know that these journalists are doing the best they can. Most of them. There's time constraints, there's resource constraints, and there are issues that they face all the time. And they are in the line of fire every day. They get the threatening phone calls. They get the threats. They get the intimidation. They get the brush-offs. They get the doors slammed on their faces. It's a certain kind of human being to have that done to you day after day after day and still turn up to work. And I know during some time period when I was at FBC, Eleanor now working there, I had to make the calculation of sending a journalist or tell him to write a story when I know that they would be getting into trouble and probably lose their job, knowing they have 4 kids and they're already getting just around $12,000 a year. So I had to make a decision. And that's where we had to be responsible, and we had to make calculations about how we cover that story. So it's not like we are all suicidal kamikaze people. We also have responsibilities as journalists. They are humans too. And they take criticism. I mean, if you don't have a thick skin, you should not be in this profession. You take it every day. So while the criticisms, I take it, it's genuine. The journalists can do much better in this country. But also, please give them some slack that they're doing their best, and they are some of the most harassed, beaten down people in the workplace environment that they're in. Sometimes even from their own bosses. I know Eleanor will say, I used to be a slave driver too. But I will take another question now from Vanya. Or statement.
I just wanted to thank the journalists that have shared stories of struggles of communities, as well as your own struggles to get to these communities and be their voice. I want to particularly thank the stories from the north. It's completely inspiring. It's a good time to also commend you. I want to take this time to also commend the also sitting there and experience it like CK was sharing. I want to commend you and I want to encourage you to continue to do that because there are communities out there that need to tell their stories. So thank you for being our voices and the voices of communities, particularly rural communities.
It's 2:15 now. I'll take one more question and we'll round up this forum. Sherian.
Okay, no, I just made a few points. In the past year, I was working in Papua New Guinea, helping set up a newsroom for a new media company there after being here in Fiji. And just a few more weeks ago, with Miss Lilia Mohona, I attended the Red Cross. There was the international head of Red Cross in Fiji, and we discussed. I raised the question about psycho support for journalists in times of crisis, because that what came out in today's forum were the sort of things that we journalists face when out in the field. So that service, just for the FMA's information, is offered through Red Cross, and maybe we can access that for our members. And just another thing, something I seriously thought about in the past year is maybe us journalists looking more into our education systems so that we change the cultures in our countries. In Papua New Guinea, corruption is systematic, that it's almost normal. When people grow up, when kids grow up, it's the thing that it's so common that they don't see anything wrong with it. So I guess when we, against what Fiji experiences, we could say that the coup culture here is almost as parallel as to the corruption culture there. Yeah, so something I always thought about is maybe we journalists should question our governments, maybe put in civic education for our children, because like Stanley raised earlier, we have been boxed since 2000. Who's on the left side and who's on the right side? Noting back to Mr. Mbak and Mr. Ngale's comments earlier, we should not always just raise 1987. The national rhetoric has always been taking us back to 1987. It's like 2000 and 2006 never happened. So maybe we should teach our kids that teaching our kids about civic responsibility, that coups are actually making it okay for us to be disobedient and violent. So maybe that's something we should go back with today, just questioning our government on maybe fixing the education system so that we start to make a change, and then maybe when our kids are adults and we're happy grandparents, that the history for our children is much more different than what we're experiencing. Thank you.
Sorry, I'd just like to add one more thing, just to add on to what Shirin said in terms of cyclone support to journalists. Before I left for Kandago, a few days after Kenny, just like Koro, we were told to be part of the government vessel that was going. But a day before travel, I was in Nandave and I received a call from NDMO just to be informed that media will not be part of that trip. And I mean no disrespect to the Fijian. And I called my superiors just to tell them what happened during Winston may happen again in Kandau. So that evening I boarded the Lomeviti Princess bound for Kandau. And on Sunday, as always, when the government vessel arrived in Kandau, Fijian had also arrived. What I'm trying to say is that these, probably the FMA might want to take it up. These government institutions or stakeholders, they need to undergo a media training just to know the important role the media play during post-cyclones, after cyclones, the important role. This is one example. When I was in Kandavu, I wrote a story about a young kid, 8-year-old, an aspiring pilot, 8-year-old, whose mother, both legs amputated for the past 4 years. Their house was destroyed. Monday, we ran that story. On Tuesday, I received a text from Pacific Building Solutions. They were willing to build a house for this young kid and his mother. I shoot this text over to Eleanor and I sent it over to the government officials in Kandavu. Please help PBS, they need the details. And that same evening, government officials finally agreed for me to be part of their government briefing. They said they needed us to work together to share information, and I told them this is what we wanted all along. We have one common objective, and that is to quickly rebuild it and recover the people of Kandam. So probably this is something we need to take up with government officials. They need to know the important role the media play, especially in these times of crisis.
Thank you. So, sorry, Neelam, we'll have to.
I hope I can speak really.
You have to be very quick. Neelam.
Nothing that I have to link to anybody individual, but I really, in my heart always, when I hear that government is in front of Fijian or like that, but I always ask this question. I want to ask Fijian, what made them inclined to government or government to me? I mean, I really don't know. I really don't know. I want to know whether it's money or something like that. I don't know. If we are making a family organization, I really want to know. Specifically, as said, present time Fijian going to go. I want to know why.
So,
Can I have that answer?
that will be a question now we can ask to government, and the FMA can take it up.
No, why in the first place it's a media organization? They accept that. The acceptance is there. I mean, like media organization, we should caution them. If we want to be free in Fiji, we talk about media freedom.
Well, all I can say is this. You try as much as you can, right? If you get a seat like you, right? How the government allocates stuff, that's up to the government, right? We make a request. And when the request comes, then they say, hey, you got a seat. That's it, you take it up. What goes on behind the scene is not our concern. We want to get there and cover the event. Exactly what he's saying, right? We want to be there and cover the event. Now, we don't get involved in politics. Leave it to the politicians to do the politics. We go in there and highlight what the people, what the people's concerns are. So, this thing about, the future, I know, there are a lot of people here who probably hold the same view. But what I want to say is this, we are the Fijian, okay, I'm wearing my different hat now. The Fijian is a commercial organization, just like any other commercial organization, right? And some people even say, they venture to say, oh, it's not owned by the government, right? And we go through the same challenges that other media organizations go through, right? So when something happens, we give our, we pitch for that, whatever. If we get it, we're lucky, right? Sometimes we don't get it. Yeah, we get bumped off. One thing we found out that for them, the Department of Information comes first. They give their own department the first choice. And so if there are any other seats left, then we are lucky to be able to get one. But the assumption that that there is some kind of collusion, right? That's not true. I just want to correct that perception.
Thank you. I think that's the prerogative of the government. We can raise it as the Fijian Media Association. I know, for instance, that in the past, Ministry of Information gets a seat. And secondly, FBC, when I was at FBC, I forced to get our seat. I mean, it's a competitive environment. We all fight to get the story first. And generally, if the commercial stations get a seat, that's fine. But if there's only one space there, you fight for your organization to get there. Ideally, we'd like everybody to be there. But as I said, once we're out of this room and we think, we are competitors. In the past, I remember when Imraz Iqbal and they used to run after a press conference, who to break the story. They would be in the same press conference, but they would run, Dan J. Dell, I think, and Imraz. They'd compete. And if one beat, they'd call the other and says, I beat you. Or if one got the story wrong, yeah, you got the story wrong. But they had no Facebook at that time to really put them down. But they would go around the whole week and tell everyone in the bar, he got it wrong, he's embarrassed, he's a rubbish journalist. I think it's a very competitive environment. And sometimes maybe that competition is lacking amongst us in terms of the hunt for stories. But that's the nature of the game. But I say we have a common goal of what we want to achieve. The noble goals that we want to achieve that we have discussed here.
You know, this thing about competition doesn't only cover the relationship between the media and the government, but it extends beyond that. You know, within the private sector, you've got NGOs and all that, and the COP23. You know, there were some media organizations who got a free ticket to COP, right? We didn't get that. We had to pay for it to get to COP, right? And imagine the cost from here to Bonn, Germany. But there's some of the things that happen. You know, nobody complains about it. We just go ahead and do it. That's the nature of the industry we're in. Okay.
Thank you. I think there's food for thought. We can have further discussions. All the things that have been raised here, including yours, Eleanor, and yours will be in a letter that the Fijian Media Association will send to all the newsrooms, editors. But there is some trauma counseling at Shenanigans at 6 p.m. The traditional media counseling. But the points are well noted in this series. We just have one more message that's coming through. Please bear with us. It's from the West, and it's Margaret Weiss. Shall we get out of the way? Speaker. Is the speaker on? No.
Takes the volume.
Done. Our apologies for that. We're going to put it online, so it'll be available for you to watch later. And we'll put it on the Fijian Media Association page and all the other media pages, to hear from Margaret Weiss, to give the perspective of the West journalists and the issues they face. But on behalf of the Fijian Media Association, I'd like to thank the Citizens Constitutional Forum for their partnership with us on this event. We'd like to thank the NGOs who've turned up and the members of the Diplomatic Corps who've turned up. Thank you for support. We thank all the colleagues in the media who have turned up today. And we'd just like to invite all of you, as you many of you know, this evening we will really celebrate Press Freedom Day. That's at 6 p.m. this evening, and we invite all of you to join us as well. It's a networking cocktail. But It's a powerful, emotional day for many of us, as you saw from the presentations that were given. And it's a day for us to be proud of. It's a day for us to fight for. And whatever differences or things we may have, which are there, we need to work and continue working to provide the role that the media has played over the decades, and to pay tribute to the philosophy of having media freedom. Thank you very much, everybody, and refreshments are still